Okay, here is a brief introduction. We're about to do the scratch, scrape, acid absorbency, and visual tests, similar to what we did when we were in class. So we're going to actually show some of that stuff and remind you of some of the things that we're looking for when we're doing these basic tests. Okay, the first set that we have here, if you remember, these are all man-made tiles. Okay, every one of these here. All right, so when I come to do my scratch test, again, that's a hardness test, and I'm trying to identify whether the tile is natural or man-made. If it's natural stone, with the exception of granite, I want to put my brush ring on the tool. That's the first thing that I need to remember. So this test I want you to do on every floor, that way I can identify it, I can make it safe. But on any of these tiles, if I just come, and remember, I'm not trying to make a big X or any of that, I'm not going to gouge into these tiles and make marks, because eventually you can, if you put enough pressure, make a mark on these tiles, and you can, that'll be a permanent mark. So what I really want to do is I just want a moderate amount of pressure, and I want to see if I can, make a mark there. And I know from the camera angle where you're sitting right now, you can't see it. I'm going to show you more close up on the natural stone. But on these, I can give a moderate amount of pressure. There's no mark that's made, and so I know that these are man-made tiles. If I can't make a mark with a moderate amount of pressure with my knife, then I know that my boot ring on the tool is not going to make a mark either. So any of these ceramic or porcelain or quarry tiles, I'm okay to go ahead and use my boot ring on the tool. And I'm also going to be able to use Super Punch in the grout lines, because I can do an acid test on these, which is my third test. And again, refer to the SMT training segments that we've recorded for more details on these. But I could put a drop of acid on all these tiles, and I got no reaction at all. So that confirms my initial test, which is my hardness test. Now an acid sensitivity test will also confirm that. So I can go ahead and use Super Punch in the grout lines to brighten those up, and I can use my boot ring on the tool on any of these ceramic, porcelain, and quarry tiles. On this next set of tiles, I'm looking at all natural stones, and I'm going to do those same tests over here. First, I'm going to start with a hardness test, and I'm not going to zoom in on this one. I'm going to do a real close zoom in on another piece of tile, a dark marble, so that you could see the contrast. But if you remember from training, if I come to a granite surface like this, I'm going to have basically the same result with a moderate amount of pressure as I do over here with the ceramic and porcelain tile. So I can just give that a moderate amount of pressure, and I'm watching very closely right at the point, all right, where my knife is touching. And I'm looking for, especially on dark tile, it's easy to see, but I'm looking for a little mark that's going to be made. Now you probably won't be able to see this on the limestone, but I can watch in that one little spot right where the knife edge is pointing, and I can make a mark right on there, and I know that's a natural stone. So any of the rest of these tiles, these are all natural stone. I can make a little bit of a mark on any one of those. Now, to confirm, and I go to my acid test, I'm not going to be expecting this to react on granite. So that's natural stone, and so is that, but I'm not getting any reaction. However, these are all calcite-based stones here. See that? So any of those calcite-based stones, I got a lot of calcium in there, and that's what's off-gassing right now with the Super Punch. So I'm using Super Punch straight, and this is telling me a number of things. Number one, on these stones right here, I'm not getting a reaction, so I can go ahead and use Super Punch to brighten up the grout lines in that floor. And I can also, because I'm not getting a scratch on these, I can leave my boot ring on the tool if I want to. However, with all the rest of these, with any of your travertine, marble, or limestone, you're going to easily make a mark, and they'll also all be acid sensitive, so they will all react with the Super Punch when you put it on there. All right, so first thing I'm going to do, anytime that I can scratch a stone, put the brush ring on the tool. The second thing that I was supposed to remember was cha-ching. So brush ring, cha-ching. Then I know that any of these stones, when I go to clean them, these are a specialized field. And in cleaning this kind of stuff, my price is going to be a bit higher. But also, when I do my acid tests and I verify in these areas that these are all calcite-based stones, No acids to brighten up the grout lines. At that point, all I can do is add a little bit of agitation with a floor buffer and a very soft brush like a Tampico brush, or I can use my grout pole in those grout lines to brighten them up. No acids on those stones. Okay, next I've got a piece of dark marble here, and I'm going to do those same tests, and hopefully you can see it a little better than on the lighter colored stones. So I'm going to come in close to this other piece. This is part of the stone here, but I'm going to do a hardness test right next to that. I want you to watch closely next to the knife edge. I'm just going to put a moderate amount of pressure, and right there I've got a nice little mark. All right, so I'll do it again right next to that. Again, I got a nice little mark right next to the first mark. That lets me know that I've got a soft stone. I'm going to put my brush ring on the tool. Now, if I can't get this in the first shot, I'm going to zoom around and I'm going to get the reflectivity on this stone. But obviously, it's going to react. I'm going to get a off-gassing that happens. And so I know that this is an acid-sensitive stone, therefore no super punch in the cleaning. And as I wipe that away, we're going to see, as we saw in the videos, yeah, you can see the reflectivity is gone now in those areas. So the calcium, the softer minerals in that area have been eaten away, and so now the light does not reflect off of the surface of that stone like it did before, so I would need to polish that back up. So anytime you see stuff like that, that is a problem that needs to be polished out. But if I do this in an inconspicuous area and a very, very small drop of acid, I can identify for certain that this is an acid-sensitive type of stone, and therefore I can use no super punch when cleaning this floor. This next little segment is about the scrape test. And again, with a scrape test, I'm looking for topical floor finish. This tile has topical floor finish on it. Now, most of the time, just because a tile is shiny does not mean it has topical finish. But visually speaking, I'll be looking at the grout lines, which I don't have an example of here. But when I see shiny grout lines, that's going to throw a red flag off in my mind and let me know there's probably some floor finish on that floor. What I am going to do in this area is I'm going to take my knife and come across the area. Okay, I'm going to try to do it this way so you can see it peel up. Okay, so right there on my knife, what I'm doing, big old chunk of floor finish that I've peeled up off of there. Okay, so what I'm looking for, and I'll do this on the tiles themselves to verify if there's any topical finish on there, but I'll also be putting a drop of acid in the grout lines. If it does not fizz, that means something is in that grout line and it's inhibiting the acid from getting into the grout. So visually I'm looking for the shiny grout. I'm going to double check with an acid test to make sure that the acid is in fact not coming in contact with the grout, and then I'll go ahead and scrape the top of the tile. Now if I've determined by an acid test there's nothing in the grout lines, and I've determined by a hardness test that I can make a scratch in that tile, I'm going to go ahead and avoid doing the scrape test, because I'm just going to put another huge scrape on the top of that tile. So visually and the acid test are going to tip me off that I may need to do more of a scrape test to verify that I have some sort of a topical floor finish on those tiles. Okay, so just wanted to review real quick. 5 simple tests. The one that we didn't do so far is the absorbency test. I'll flash across the screen the same slide that was in our slideshow. The absorbency test is going to help me determine if water is readily absorbed into those tiles. If that's the case, then I can clean as normal. I'll still do an acid test to make sure it's not acid sensitive or something. But what I'm looking for is an unglazed porcelain tile. Very rare, but if I do run into that, then I want to make sure if I am going to seal that floor, I will seal the entire floor, not just the grout lines. If it's a natural stone, I'll take a look at how long it takes for the water to absorb into that stone. That'll give me an idea how many coats of water-based sealer or solvent-based sealer that I'm going to put down. So that's your absorbency test. And finally, the visual test we discussed in the SMT segment. And I'm looking for broken grout, cracks in the grout, cosmetic deficiencies, or complications that I might see in the grout that will alert me to potential, loose tiles, things like big substrate problems with long cracks going all the way across the floor and stuff. Those visual indicators will point me in a specific direction for a different type of problem, which I may or may not want to attempt to fix. But I do want to let my customer be aware of that. Also with the visual test, again, that's going to lead me into the direction of this scrape test to make sure that I don't have a topical floor finish that's going to inhibit my cleaning process. And then visually, I'm also kind of looking at other things like broken tiles. I'm looking at the size of the job. I'm looking at soil load and things. Once I've determined pretty much what kind of flooring I've got, when I do my demonstration, the other visual aspects of that, how much furniture there is to move, the soil load and so forth, will help me to determine the appropriate per square foot price so that I'm still making money. So, a couple of times that we've reviewed this, just made mention of it in the SMT segment, wanted to show you or remind you the stuff that we did in class. If you have questions on that, of course, you give Roger or myself a call. But practice, 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 and make sure you do this on every job, and in no time, it'll be second nature.